What's good, guys? Welcome back to the first take, and it's time for the Daredevil Season 2 review. Now, I wasn't sure when to do this because I watched it on Friday, binged it, back to front, forward to back. And I was gonna straight away do a review, but then I decided, no, wait. And like with Jessica Jones in Season 1 of Daredevil, I decided, let me just wait a bit. Let me just let it digest, just for a day or two. And I've done that. I'm glad I did. It was interesting to see other people's perspectives, what they thought about the show and whether they liked it or hated it. Real interesting. For me, definitely loved it. Loved it. But it's definitely interesting because I can see where it lost a few people. Let's break down the characters first. Daredevil. There were points in the season where he became a little frustrating for me as a character, and I started to draw these parallels between Daredevil and the Arrow, not as a show, but as characters. They're these very self-righteous, I'm right, I'm doing what needs to be done, but no one else can do what I'm doing because that's wrong. Like, you know, very self-righteous and stubborn, not really listening to other people's opinions, and that can get a little infuriating. More so with Arrow. With Daredevil, I think Charlie Cox is such a solid enough actor that he still manages to maintain a certain level of empathy where you do feel that he's trying to do the right thing and trying to protect the people he cares about. You know, with Arrow, it was just got really annoying, like that character. I don't think it's Stephen Amell's fault, I think it's just that character. It just became kind of infuriating. And they introduced something in this season which we didn't really get that much of the first season, and die-hard Daredevil fans of the comic books really wanted to see. And you can kind of say careful what you wish for, even though I felt it was fine, it was needed, and that was really getting to see Matt Murdock as a lawyer, and also Foggy, and just that world, 'cause that is a big part of the character, being a lawyer and that in-court shit. You know, it's part of the comic books and people wanted to see it. And that was what the main middle chunk of this season was. Keep in mind, I'm going to be spoiler. I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning. And it was the in-court things that kind of lost a few people because it slowed down quite a bit. And a lot of people moaned about the first season, about it getting slow and slumping. This one, for me personally, I really didn't feel it. I felt that it still maintained enough momentum and kept going through. The only part of the court stuff that I wasn't a fan of was it kind of clipped the wings of the Punisher. He kind of went from this badass, like awesome character that we'd become introduced to, and then suddenly he became muted and just kind of just stuck there. And I didn't like seeing him like that, just stagnant for those stretch of episodes. But then he got to be back. John Bernthal, it's the first time I pronounced it right. Well done, man. Like, hands down, the best representation. Not that hard, but there's been quite a few of them. You know, more so than most characters, to be honest. And he does a great job, man. It was kind of like I was saying with the trailer reactions. He does bring this sense of damage, brokenness to him. And I like the fact that they really got into the psychological aspects of why he is the way he is. And this whole him getting shot in the head, that kind of contributing to the brain, that he has brain damage. He really is a broken individual, not just emotionally but physically. You know, he is mentally, he's broken. Like, he just isn't right, and there's no way to fix him. It's not saying he's a son you're gonna get over. And that was real interesting, and it's really left this kind of interesting question mark in my mind about where you can go with that character, because they left it open where, you know, he could pop up in somebody else's show or he could have his own show. It also asks another interesting question. I think somebody else mentioned this, I'm not sure where. I think a few people have mentioned this a few times. The Punisher is in a way much like the Hulk, in that he's a character that he's at his best, and this Daredevil season shows that he's at his best when he has other people to bounce off of. You know, where like with the Hulk, on his own, you know, he has his films and they, you know, they're decent enough, but Hulk works best when he has other people, when he's within the Avengers and he has those other characters to bounce off. And I think that's the same with Daredevil. I keep saying Daredevil, with Punisher. Because it just kind of added balance, because he's so far in the extreme side of things that you kind of need that moral counterbalance that Daredevil brought. And the Karen Page character, Deborah Woll's character, that sort of moral balance that they brought to it, and you kind of need that. But in this show, I really enjoyed him. Like, he was brutal. It was like watching segments of The Raid. Like, there's a prison fight scene where he just, like, they really did, in a way, recapture that. I think one of the most significant action scene in the first season was that hallway fight, and they pretty much in a way recaptured it or recreated it multiple times this season in various different ways. They did it with Daredevil, and they did it with the Punisher with the prison fight, where he's just going up against all these prisoners that just come pouring out of their cells, and he just tears through them, just brutally breaking arms, breaking legs, snapping necks, like just not giving a fuck. And it's like a raid. It was, yeah, real impressive. Jon Bernthal, I really want to see more of this Punisher. But honestly, the person who I would like to see have a spin-off show from this season most, even though I love the Punisher, obvious, and I want to see him return in some form, some way, somewhere, but I really want an Elektra show. Now, the reason why I say that, for the first half of the season, not so much. Wasn't that I did like her, I did like her, but I just didn't feel for the first half of the season there was enough depth there. But once they really started to delve into her origin, when you see her as a child, and you kind of get a greater sense of where she's from and what she's had to go through, and the training and all of these, it opens doors to all of these prospects. There was always stories there from the comic book character and things that character's gone through, but you never really know how they're going to translate that into the live action and whether they're going to have those same options story wise, and they definitely did. So once you kind of got to see her as a child and her going through that training, it made the character so much more interesting, and we really got to see that conflict, that she wasn't just this one note, you know, snake, backstabbing, not to be trusted character, that there was legitimate heart there, and this battle that she was trying to fight against this, you know, the demon. She's a red demon, you know, she has to fight against that, and that she is trying to be better than she is, especially with Matt Murdock there, you know, reminds her that she is good and she does have good in her, and that made the character way more interesting. Shout out to the actress Élodie Young, dude. Yeah, the style, the fighting style which they gave her, the way it was choreographed, that unlike with the Punisher, which was very brute force, hard, you know, real physical, they gave her this more evasive, this fluid movements, a lot of kicks, and it definitely suited her, and it counterbalanced her body type, and it made it more believable. Because that's the problem, because it's not really about body type, and some people get all sensitive and saying, oh, you're body shaming. It ain't nothing about that. It's about the visual believability of someone, the way someone looks, to what the damage they're able to inflict on someone else. I'm a fan of MMA and martial arts, so, you know, I'm used to seeing people of a certain body type can't compete against, you know, lightweights can't compete against, you know, a heavyweight, regardless of if it's a man or a woman. So yeah, but they countered that, like I said, with the way her fighting style was choreographed and executed. Some of it by Élodie herself, and some by, you know, whoever the body double was at the stunt one. But just excellent. Love the action that she was in, love the character, definitely want to see more of it. And they really ended it in an interesting place. You kind of knew that she was going to come back, you know, unless it's Deadshot being the one that actually kills her, you know, her death ain't really going to be a death. She's coming back, and we saw that she's going to be back, whatever the fuck they're intending on doing with her at the end. But it's obvious she's going to be some sort of vessel, and they're going to resurrect her, because that was the whole thing with the Hand. It was all about resurrection, that they've overcome death, and they've kind of reached that point of immortality. You saw that with what was that dude, the one who's named after the sushi fucking place, Nobu. Yeah, we've seen that with him. Keeps coming back. Oh, until Stick fucking chopped his head off. And Stick became a way cooler character. Again, everybody got deeper, way more depth. That's why I don't get the criticism when people saying that, oh, it was boring, it was slow. For me, I think every character got a way more. They're all given arcs, and they all went on journeys, ended up in a different place. You know, as much as Daredevil himself does get a little infuriating, like I said, he started to remind me a little too much of the Arrow character and just that he was just infuriating, like his sort of self-righteous attitude that he kind of had with some of the people around him. And it was nice, even with seeing Rosario Dawson come back. She isn't there much, not as much as she was in the first season, but it's enough to show that there's an arc there. You know, she ends up in a very different place that she starts, and it also opens the door for her to pop up in the other shows. I don't know if it's been confirmed yet, but I believe she's going to pop up in the Luke Cage show. Not sure if it's been confirmed yet, like I said, but I believe I read that somewhere. But it kind of, the way it ended with her no longer being a nurse, it kind of frees her up to, I don't know whether she's going to be literally teaming up with Luke Cage in some respects, or you know what, but you know, it opens the doors to an interesting new journey that character can go in. And that was cool. And even with Kingpin, you know, he really is. He went from season 1 Daredevil wasn't really about, the antagonist for season 1 wasn't really Kingpin, it was just Wilson Fisk. You know, big difference there. Fisk was just this businessman who kind of operated in the shadows and the underworld, but he was still very much a businessman in his own mind at the very least. He just did things which he felt he had to do. I think this season really saw that creation of the Kingpin. Like, he identified himself as being a Kingpin, and that was significant because, you know, he is finally now that character. So once we see him get out of prison, which I'm presuming next season he will do somehow, some way, you know, the Kingpin will be here finally. And even though he's not in it much, and I was really missing him up until, you know, he made his appearance. I was really missing that character, because I guess that was the one thing I'll give season 1 over season 2, is I felt Wilson Fisk's story, the love story that he had with the female character, I forget the name, but that was way more heartfelt, which was strange because, you know, he's the antagonist, he's the villain. So for him to have a love story and this connection, that was really the heart, the emotional center of that first season. Was strange, but you know, it really worked for me, and that was what really clicked with me. And they didn't really have any of that with this season. They had, you know, romantic, you know, shit going on, but it wasn't, I don't know, it didn't really click, like I said. And even with Karen and Matt, it just wasn't, you know, it was there, it was kind of dancing around it, but it just wasn't, it didn't really hit the way what Fisk's story in season 1 did. But beyond that, action-wise, way better than the first season. Story-wise, I felt with the multiple threads, and every character was interesting to me. No one I felt was on board with anybody. I liked seeing Karen go on her story. I like seeing Punisher's story, except for when it kind of slumps in the middle. And I like Elektra's story, and that was really fascinating to see where they were taking that. And even, like I said, Stick was a way more interesting character. Like, he was just fucking cold in the first season, just cold. There was nothing really to empathize with, but this time he was just a way more funny character to me. He was just, he's a douchebag, but you can see that deep down he does care about them, both of them. So it's definitely a thumbs up for me, man. I give it, you know, I'm gonna give it 4.5. You know, saying people gonna ask me why not 5 out of 5, but now compare 5 out of 5 TV shows which have just blown my mind as I've been watching it. Things like, you know, the Breaking Bads and the Sopranos, and this is definitely up there in quality. It could go 5, but now I'm gonna go 4.5. I think that is the truest representation. The truest representation for me. I found it more enjoyable, more consistent than season 1, and more cinematic, and again more consistent than Jessica Jones. Even though I did enjoy Jessica Jones thoroughly, but I felt like Jessica Jones, as much as it had subject matter that was mature, with, you know, Kilgrave and what he was doing, you know, the abuse aspect of what he was doing, I felt like there was, the writer behind that kind of held themselves back. They could have gone so much further in what he was doing and in the portrayal of that. And, you know, sex scenes aside, I felt that it just wasn't committed to really just going full on. It just could have gone so much further, in my opinion. There were too many annoying characters for me, especially that, you know, that military wannabe Captain America guy, which I just found just annoying as fuck every time he popped up. And I just felt that they could have condensed that season, that 13, into 8 tight episodes, and it just kind of felt like they really kind of drew it out. But it's going to be interesting to see next season of Jessica Jones with where Foggy ends up from this season of Daredevil, now that he's working for Carrie Ann Moss's company. That's going to be interesting to see if Foggy interacts with Jessica Jones and how he perceives her and her abilities. That's another thing though about Daredevil. With each season of these Marvel shows, I feel increasingly like they're moving away from their connection to the movies, even though they know it's all part of one, it's all the MCU, that in theory they're all connected to each other. And there are, especially with season 1, there were a few references to stuff that was going on with the Avengers. They referred to the big green guy, they referred to the guy with a hammer, so there was, and Captain America I think was referred to in Jessica Jones, so they're, it's all connected, we know that. But because of the way that those two units are run, they're very different teams. Kevin Feige with the films and what's his face with the TV shows, and they don't really cooperate very well with each other, especially over the last year. They've completely split. Feige has no interest in the TV stuff, and these guys don't really seem to be that interested in films. It's increasingly feeling like it's not part of the same world anymore, and it's a shame. It's like they're really going out of their way just to not even bother making a sort of consistent connection, because you kind of think that all of these things that are going on within this Daredevil show and with the Jessica Jones show, and now that they've established that Spider-Man does exist in this universe, you kind of think that even if they didn't show another character, even just the fact that there wasn't a mention of a guy who can climb up walls, and I bet you I'll be surprised in Civil War if they refer to any events, of what Daredevil's existence, the Devil of Hell's Kitchen or Jessica Jones. I bet you they don't refer to any of these people, and it just makes it harder to keep these worlds connected together. It just feels like they're just moving further and further apart, and they're feeling less, together. And that's a shame, even though it still works as its own entity. If you've never seen the films or you don't like the films, you can just watch Daredevil and enjoy it for what it is, for its own world. But for those of us that do watch all of it, it's a shame that they really seem to be severing their ties with each other. And we still haven't really ever gotten a true confirmation as to whether the Defenders will appear in Infinity Wars. It's never been confirmed. It's something that keeps being asked, and I think Kevin Feige entertains the idea, but he's never said yes, definitely they're going to be in there. I think that would be nice for those of us who enjoy both of it, but it's not needed necessarily. Like I say, it all works, it all can, survive on its own. It doesn't rely on these other things to survive. Like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for a while really needed the films. It's come into its own now with the last season, and with this season it's got its own little voice now. It's kind of doing its own thing. But again, I think that's going to be a problem once the Inhumans make their appearance on the cinematic level. I'm wagering on the fact that they're just going to completely contradict a ton of shit that's happened in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. over the last 2 seasons, which again would be a shame, but they just run completely differently from each other, so I guess that's the way it's going to go. But I'm really looking forward to where they can go with this whole Defenders universe. But it's going to be, I was hoping though that they were going to crank up Daredevil's connection to not just the mystic world, but seeing how he deals and him being with people who are super powered, with mutants or Inhumans, should I say, Inhumans. Like with Jessica Jones, because it's going to be way more of a jarring experience now to see him, if his next appearance is in Defenders before there's a season 3. We're not sure yet, the timetable still hasn't been pinned down on when that Defenders is coming. But we're still yet to actually see Daredevil share the screen with people with powers, truly, except for Nobu, who just keeps coming back to life, but that's not really the same. I'm just in my head thinking of Daredevil hanging out with Jessica Jones. It seems to be a weird, because they've kept it so separate, even though circular characters, the orbiting characters around Daredevil and Jessica Jones have interacted together. It's going to be interesting to see how that all kind of clicks and seeing him side by side with people with powers, because they really haven't done that. And I was hoping they would have someone, not necessarily a hero, but even if it's a villain, someone who just has something out of what he's seen before and had to deal with. But they didn't really go that far. They kept it grounded. Not a bad thing, but the fact that they're working towards a bigger goal with the Defender show, you would have thought they would have put little seeds of that in this season. But I'm real curious to know what you guys thought about the show compared to season 1 and compared to Jessica Jones, where you think the improvements were from the first season, or if you didn't like it, what was it that you didn't like? Was it the pace? Some people thought it was boring. I didn't see that personally. I really did not experience that at all, but some people have. Some people have criticized it for that. And how do you feel about the fact that it does feel like these worlds are increasingly, from the cinematic one to the TV world, they're increasingly just pulling apart from each other? They just don't feel like there's as much cohesion there. If, it just, it just kind of, it's a shame, especially, I don't know, man. It'd be interesting to see where the Civil War, where the various battles and skirmishes take place in Civil War. If it's in New York, and with Spider-Man's inclusion, there's a chance that some of those may actually happen in New York. You kind of think that, shouldn't there have been an appearance from someone from the Netflix world in there to represent, like, does Kevin Feige care so little about what goes on the TV level that he just doesn't, he's admitted he doesn't really care that much about it, but it just feels like it would make sense for someone to be there. I don't know, man. Let me know, guys. Write comments down below. You like the video, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up. I am Ed Reese, and this has been my reaction to season 2 of Daredevil, Netflix's Daredevil and Marvel's season 2, baby. I liked it. I really enjoyed it. And bring on the Punisher, baby. Bang!